Welcome to the Under 8 podcast, a 3 times per week college basketball show brought to you in under 8 minutes. At the time of recording, it is Thursday, February 15th, 10:45 p.m. My name is Josh Mullenix. On today's pod, Caitlin Clark became the NCAA women's basketball career scoring leader. Let's talk about that and more right now on the Under 8 podcast. Caitlin Clark needed 8. She got 49. Caitlin Clark needed 8. She got it in like 77 seconds. Caitlin Clark needed 8. She got 23 in the first quarter of Iowa's 106-89 win over Michigan. Josh, if you're going to break a record, you might as well do it on a 49-point night. And if you're going to break a record, you might as well do it on a 40-footer crossover off balance. Just the most Caitlin Clark shots that you could absolutely make. It was a spectacular night, a historical night, and Caitlin going 49 on 16 of 31 shooting just makes it even better.
That first quarter was laugh out loud ridiculous. That's the phrase that I have come up with for it. I mean, she scores on the first 2 possessions. So then you go, okay, she's within one shot. And my first thought was, if I'm her, I don't care what happens the next possession. I'm launching some kind of deep 3-pointer. And it took a couple possessions because they turned the ball over. But then she did exactly that.
Yeah.
Because why not? You've already decided that doing this at home is a big deal. Clearly, she's feeling it. So it's not like it's a terrible shot to take. And, right, of course, she makes it. And within 3 minutes of game time, she has the record. And all of a sudden, Iowa's calling a timeout with, basically the entire game left because that's the only thing you can do.
That's what you do.
Yeah. Right.
For LeBron forever. I mean, we didn't have a ceremony in the middle of the game like we did for LeBron, but forever scoring records broken will translate to stoppage in time, stoppage in the game to give it its proper attention.
Whether she wanted that timeout to be called or not, that timeout was getting called.
Totally.
I mean, she was on pace for 92 and 16 at the end of the first quarter. And only
ain't nothing but a thing.
Yeah, only finished with 49 and 13. And by the way, should have had a 5th assist in the first quarter. Now, if you want to say the one that got deflected, because that should have been tipped and not counted as an assist. So maybe it evens out that it was 4, but she had another great pass that led to a foul that, in my opinion, you should get an assist for because she made that play as well. I think she counted for all but 2 of their points in the first quarter. It was as good as I have. Not that I watch every game she plays and you can easily take it for granted, but that was as impressive as I have ever seen from her. She was, and then she hits the 3 and gets fouled. I mean, it was just, I was laughing. It was that preposterous what she was doing in that first quarter.
It's why you break it at home. It's why, and we talked about it a little bit, but it's why you break it at home. I mean, it was 12 times more awesome. Because, I mean, and maybe it's just, if she's playing at Nebraska, for example, that people in the building understand and it would still be cool. And I'm sure it would have been, but that's why you do it at home. Because, I mean, it couldn't have been sicker.
No. See, the counter to that is also she didn't score a point in the fourth quarter and she scored 23 in the next quarter. Yeah. There was something, and we've talked about this. We don't need to get back into that. You're right. Today, the story is that she broke the record, and it really could not have gone any better. She was completely unfazed and just continued to get better and better from this instead of it stressing her out. Got it out of the way early, so then she could just keep knocking down shots. It was remarkable, and by the way, now she's chasing Pete Maravich. And I guess this is the question I wanted to throw out there is, we're not going to know the answer until the end of this season and until she decides whether she's going to come back again or not. But if they win the national championship, let's just say, does she have the greatest college basketball career of all time? If she ends with the men's and women's all-time scoring record for NCAA plus a Final Four, a national championship game appearance plus a national championship, or even plus another Final Four trip, because we're at least in that conversation, depending on how much team success they have and how this all plays out. Because statistically,
I'm not having the
she's gonna get there.
conversation if she doesn't win a national championship. I'm not interested in having the conversation.
And I think that's the big thing. That's pretty much where I am too.
You can have the most impressive statistical career, but I can't go all the way to the greatest college career if you don't win a title.
Because
I
those
think
are two different things.
yeah, those are two different things. And, we can have the GOAT conversation in a lot of different places, kind of boils down to that. Like LeBron's career is statistically unmatched forever, but that doesn't necessarily translate to is the greatest basketball player the NBA has ever seen. Not necessarily. I think that's probably like if she wins a title, then I think it's and you know in theory challenges Pete Maravich, then I mean, what else do you want her to do? But that would be my answer to that.
Yeah. It's an interesting situation to be in because she's part of the way there with the team success, right? They've
Yeah.
been very good. They made a national championship game.
Sure.
So if you put another run on top of that, now we're talking about 2 trips to the national championship game in 4 years. And
But you're also
potentially
talking about could never win a national championship.
Right.
Got there, was never able to do it.
Right.
That's also in the first sentence of the team success the team success section of her wiki.
Right. It's there for the taking if they can pull this off. That's really what I'm getting at here is it's a very interesting conversation if all of these things happen. It's a big if though, and I'm with you that I would feel differently depending on how this plays out, which is why we got to wait to litigate it. There was just something I was thinking about as she was doing this though is the pieces are kind of at least there for her to put together to make a really strong argument if everything goes perfectly.
Yeah. And she'll have to be absolutely insane for Iowa to win the national championship this year. Like there's no that would be the other part of it. Like South Carolina is not losing to an Iowa team that doesn't have like a 40-point Caitlin Clark performance. It's probably not happening. Like so she would have to be insane for 6 straight games, which would also be obviously part of it. Iowa to take a step back, Iowa 106-89, number 4 in this week's poll, 23-3, 12-2 in the Big Ten. Ohio State 13-1 in the Big Ten. Those two teams play each other one more time before the season is over in the last game of the season. So 1 game back, but still there's a head-to-head up in the air there as well. But Iowa getting the win on a very historic night for college basketball in general, but of course Caitlin Clark in particular. Let's move into another impressive outcome from a night ago. South Carolina in their tracks stopped by Bruce Pearl's Auburn Tigers 101-61, Josh. 101-61.
Yep.
That's you're rolling and then you're not rolling. I mean, Auburn shot 61% from the field, 60% from the 3-point line. South Carolina failed to get to 20 made field goals, 3 of 15 from 3-point line. I mean, lopsided. And I don't totally know how to feel about it because I still am not totally sure like how good South Carolina is and how good Auburn is. But on this particular night, it was 40 points better than the Gamecocks. And that's no matter how you slice it. And we can get into how much better Auburn is at home than they are just about everywhere else. But on this particular night at Auburn, it was quite the performance from the Tigers.
Yeah, South Carolina did have a 7-game winning streak heading into this game.
That's correct.
one conference loss on the road.
Mm,
So it's not like they've done this before. They
right.
most certainly haven't.
Now, to
However,
be fair, they got smoked in their other away loss.
yes,
They
that
did
is,
they got
yeah,
torched.
yes,
20.
that was
So you've lost by a combined 67 points in
in
your
the state of
two
Alabama.
in the state of Alabama. That's correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure.
I think I do know what to make of this. And you
Tell
mentioned
me.
it there. And this is just generally, I feel like, been something that's true of Auburn. Good luck beating them in that building.
Yeah.
They are as good as any team in the country at home in terms of how difficult it is to go into that place and win.
Yeah.
And we don't talk about it that way, but that is what they have become, and that is certainly what they are this season. Is that enough to win the SEC? No, probably not.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not particularly good on the road. And we talked about this 3-game stretch that they're now 2/3 of the way through and how much that was going to tell you. And what happened? They laid a dud on the road against Florida and they blew the doors off South Carolina at home.
Yeah.
I probably would have expected them to win this game by at least 10. Certainly not 40. But it's the same thing. I expected them to handle Alabama pretty easily because they're just that good at home.
Yeah.
Does that translate to the NCAA tournament? Probably not, because I feel like it's more of a home thing than a not being on the road thing. Because that's
Mhm.
always the interesting part of this too is, and you can have this conversation with Kansas as well. Where does the neutral floor fit into that conversation?
Yeah.
Is that something where you're not playing in front of opposing fans, so it's okay? Or is it you're not playing in front of your fans, so it's a problem?
Yeah.
We're going to have to wait until conference tournament, NCAA tournament to really figure that out. I feel pretty confident in my answer on Auburn, though, that if you're not in that building, it's a different team. So I don't feel great about their NCAA tournament chances. I'm not getting swept away by this game. Just like I wasn't super concerned after the Florida game. It's just, oh, okay. They are not playing particularly well on the road. Still don't think they're the best team in the SEC. But they are absolutely capable of doing this to anybody. Jalen Williams is having the best stretch of the season. Their bench was fantastic. They
Mhm.
shot the lights out. And oh, by the way, I just want to throw this out there. Jedi Broom did make a new career high in 3-pointers in this game as well.
Of course he did. Of course he did. 29% career 3-point shooter.
He is better this year, though. You got to give him that. He's improved.
He is better this year. 101-61 Auburn doing what they do inside that building. Let's jump around the top 25 on the women's side real quick, Josh. Kind of lay out what's happened over the last couple of days. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with, it didn't end up being a win, but Tennessee really gave South Carolina a scare up at halftime. And then South Carolina dominated the offensive glass and Tennessee kind of fell apart offensively. And yeah, that was that. But valiant effort by the Lady Vols. Would have been a huge win. It's good to see South Carolina get tested. And then a couple things in the Big 12 here. Oklahoma, 9 straight after beating Baylor. Now 2 games up in the loss column because Iowa State took 36 free throws and made 31 of them, beat Kansas State in double overtime.
It's a lot of free throws.
It's a lot of free throws and some clutch free throws there as well. And so this conference of all of these teams, with Kansas State having this great season, with Texas being really highly ranked, with Baylor getting off to the start that they did, this is Oklahoma's conference.
Yep.
On the way out going to the SEC, they're just sitting here at the top of the Big 12 with, again, 9 straight wins. So that was one thing. And then Notre Dame, that's 43 points. Not great offensively.
Nope.
NC State, fantastic defensively. I think Notre Dame had scored at least 57 points in every game this season. And,
not tonight.
But yeah, and then that happened. So those were the things that stood out to me.
There you go. There you go. Anything else from the last couple days that you want to get to before we get out of here?
2 more things. Tough stretch for Northwestern here. You lose Ty Berry, then you lose to Rutgers. Got to stay on the right side of the bubble. I really want this team to make the NCAA tournament. I want to see if Boo Buie can work some magic, but not having Ty Berry is a big deal. So gonna have to see how that plays out. And
Yes,
then the other thing,
especially when Northwestern season has been pretty cut and dry. Like they're going to struggle to beat a lot of teams
yeah,
if it's just Boo Buie, and they can beat almost anybody, or at least challenge almost anybody when he gets help. And Tyberry, of course, one of those guys you're circling in terms of does he get support or not? Does he support Boo Buie or not? And so to see him go down is obviously tough for. Yeah, if Boo Buie being in the tournament this year would be a good thing for the NCAA tournament. So it'll suck if they stumble down the stretch partly because of this injury and don't get it.
and I stand by my belief that they would have had a great chance to make the Sweet 16 if they were full strength. I
There
really
you go.
really believe that if the matchups fell the right way. And
Sure.
unfortunately now, I mean, we may still find out they could still make it. I just will be much less confident for that exact reason because Ty Berry was that second guy. Now you don't have him.
Yeah.
The other thing here, did you hear about the elevator?
I did. I did.
What a strange thing.
Yeah. Like there are a couple things going on here. One, yeah, of course they got stuck in an elevator. Like that's but the other thing that's going on here is that only happens in a mid-major venue. Like
Right.
a high major team is every high major venue you're running on the same floor from like on the same level of the building from your locker room or up a ramp or down a ramp. Like there's no elevators involved. So of course, they probably came from a locker room that's in the basement of that building and had to take the elevator to get up to the correct floor. And there's so many, like, of course that happened, things going on there.
If you want to think about the disparities between the teams that play each other in the NCAA tournament and that right high major versus mid major world that these teams operate in.
Mm-hmm.
This is the same team that beat Purdue in the NCAA tournament last season. Got stuck in an elevator, and by the way, did come back to beat LIU in overtime. So
Mm-hmm.
good for FDU actually coming out on top. I saw they tweeted going on up or something, just not in the elevator.
Nice. I'm in. I'm into that. I'm into that very much.
Yeah, no, that's a legitimate good point that is worth reflecting on. Is right. There's no way this happens in the Big Ten, in the ACC, the Big 12, whatever conference.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet, this is you heard kind of some of the same things about St. Peter's and what Shaheen Holloway had to do in terms of trying to get resources and not showing players the gym until they got to campus because he was scared he was worried it was going to scare him away.
Yeah.
This is it was a kind of a funny and ultimately, thankfully, a harmless thing, but it does put some context behind what makes these Cinderella runs and these upsets in the NCAA tournament so incredible.
Indeed. Some good games this weekend. Perhaps the biggest Big East game since the realignment. Like that might not be an exaggeration. I'm sure there are some Villanova, like Xavier games in some of those Xavier years, but like number 1 UConn versus number 4 Marquette in Stores is something. I guess it's technically in Hartford, but you get my point. In Connecticut, Kansas at Oklahoma. That's another big game for a Kansas team that is hanging on for dear life in the Big 12. Kentucky is at Auburn. I think right now, what do you think, Auburn? Like whatever the line is, take Auburn to cover, right?
Unless
Absolutely.
it's 12, 15 points, yeah.
There you go. I mean, and even then, you might need to take
Gotta
them
consider it.
anyways.
Sure.
But there were some good games this weekend. We'll be back to talk about them on Sunday afternoon sometime. Until then, thank you so much for being here. That's the Under 8 podcast for Thursday, February 15th. It is 11:08 p.m. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your shows. Follow the Under 8 pod on Twitter. Subscribe on YouTube. Thank you so much for being here. We will see you on Sunday.